Yes.
All right. So I'm Ervin Ruci. I'm a researcher mostly working in the areas of natural language processing and computational geometry. And I'm going to talk about geo-parsing business that I started a few years back, in 2015 to be exact. And it started pretty much when I was in Barcelona, where you guys are from, where Ed is living right now. I was there on vacation, and I was trying to get to this address, Carrer de Colomins and something else. And what happened is I tried to put this into Google Maps, and it sent me to the wrong address, and I was confused, trying to a couple of hours to find my B&B. And then the next day I started looking into this, and I realized that there was, in Google Maps, if you remove this word Entresuelo, then it would find the correct location. So I realized that this was a geo-parsing problem because there was a lot of text in the input address, and somehow the Google parser got confused and sent me to the wrong address. So if you see on the right side of the screen, it's the company I'm talking about started with this tweet. So, but I didn't do much that evening because, of course, I spilled sangria on my laptop. And here is me with my son, I think in a beach in Badalona. And so, yeah, like I said, there are dangers of doing a string similarity match, which I think what Google is doing and some other companies that do geocoding. Sometimes string similarity doesn't work best when you have long strings of text that match some other address. And this is how I decided to start Geocode.xyz. I had built geocoders before when I was in graduate school back in 2004, 2005. I built Geocoder.ca, which also did some geoparsing, but only for Canada and the United States. So there were a few steps to follow before I got to Geocode.xyz, like finding new data. Luckily, in 2015, there was the Open Addresses project, and there is the OpenStreetMap project. So they were quite evolved by that time, and they had a lot of data. And the next step was building a better parser, because dealing with worldwide data is much different than just dealing with US or Canadian data, North American data. Then build better matching functions and optimize this kind of beast, as I would call it, because there is a lot of data right now. For example, I think there is close to 500 gigabytes of data in the database that I have been developing. So what is geoparsing? There are many definitions around the web. I found an article in Directions magazine that called it almost magical, complex technological process that relies on data to put geoinformation into context. And context is very important, as you will see shortly. I stopped working on it for a few months after my vacation in Spain, but then I went back to it again. And in the Perl Advent calendar, I did a little presentation of my project. I wrote a little poem. I think Ed was also involved in this. I think really when this started was in the end of 2016 that I really started to work seriously on the geoparsing engine. So what is geoparsing? Here is an example of a geoparsing query that I had on Geocoder.ca before I started Geocode.xyz. When you have something like this and that other street are valid names in Porter's Lake, Nova Scotia, and they really are. So there are 9 locations within this text. So as you see, when somebody writes a long text like this, it's impossible to give a single response because you don't know which exact location they are talking about. So there is ambiguity. Now, all right. So you can also geoparse a whole book. For example, you pass in the text that you have from the Count of Monte Cristo. And this text that you see over here has been taken from that book. And the software should be able to geoparse street addresses as well as city addresses, city names. And again, we have ambiguity here, but the software should be able to disambiguate, because that's what geoparsing is mostly about, disambiguating location entities. Like if you say, I went to the Hilton in Paris, or if you say Paris Hilton, it could be a person or it could be a hotel. So you could also geoparse news stories. This is a news story that I use as an example back in the day when I was working on this. And in this news story, there is only city names mentioned. There are no addresses. But ideally, GeoParser should be able to handle street addresses, street intersections, postal codes, points of interest, and so on and so forth. So here's an example. And let's say somebody says we travel to China. Simple enough. There could be many matches here. And if you see on the screen, there is a city called China in Mexico. So there is not enough information for the GeoParser to make a good guess of what you mean by travel to China. China is a pretty big country. But if you say we travel to Shanghai, China, then it's pretty clear you're talking about Shanghai, and there you go. There will be more than one match because the software will also try to find like the airport of Shanghai and other things. There is also, it's better and it's faster when you actually write a lot more information, like the street name, where you're going to, and even in the natural language. As you see, I'm using Libre Translate. Is a project by UAV4Geo on GitHub. It's free, so you can translate. Because I don't speak Chinese, maybe some of you do, but the GeoParser should be able to easily handle text in any language. So in this case, it's Chinese. If you click on the thing, you see from this input, we got this street address parsed out. And you can also see it geocoded here. There are some points of interest nearby. If you click on the point of interest, you could go directly to the OpenStreetMap ID. Well, I'm not logged in right now, but basically there is a lot of OpenStreetMap points that I use here. And so you can do that. I think I'm going fast. Maybe I have enough time to actually give you a real demo. Here's a whole bunch of addresses in Shanghai, and I can just copy all of this text and open a new window here. So if I go to Geocode.xyz, I just copy and paste this text, put it here, and you should get pretty much all the addresses that are in that text. And it will only return the addresses that have a high confidence score. See, this goes all the way down here to confidence 0.8. Sometimes when it doesn't have a good match, then it will turn lower confidence scores as well. Now, since I have a little bit of time, I will show you something else that will tie very nicely in this next section. Well, let's see. I just was working on something else. Okay, let's try geomod this. All right, I just created an account because I cannot batch geocode. I cannot batch geocode without having an account. So basically, this is just a free account. Let's create like a text file here. And the same text that I copy and paste it, I can put into this file. And let's go back there. All right. Oh. There it is. So if I batch geocode this text now, I'll get a little bit more than just the locations. I could also get the shortest path from getting across these locations. So basically, if you go to the latest, I have a hard time Let me just close. If you go to what I just did, I can find the best route. So basically, this is the traveling salesman problem. It will give you the shortest path from getting through all of those locations. Now, why am I doing all this? It's because in the next slide, it'll become clear that if I want to geo-parse a string that is like this, exit D of metro station, go straight here and go right there, then what I can do, I can geo-parse all the individual location entities from A to D. And if the path from A to D is the shortest path, which I calculated before, then I can return the last point, or I can return the whole point, the whole path as the geocoding result. So I'm doing several things here. If I want to correctly geocode this location, I'm also geoparsing, I'm geocoding, I'm finding the shortest path, and then I'm returning an answer that is somewhere satisfactory. So about a little bit more about what doesn't work just for China. I have other examples from India and other countries that are difficult to geocode and a lot of data. And in China, it's particularly difficult because of the, if you know about the Mars coordinates versus WSGS, the problem there is well known. There are some references here if you want to read further on that. I have found a workaround to this problem, but I don't think this is the right presentation for that. So that's pretty much the gist of it. And if you want to go back to this presentation, it's at this address, and my contacts are there if you want to discuss it further.
Fantastic. Thanks very much. Very, very impressive live demo. We've not yet had anyone do batch geocoding of Chinese in real time. So very nice. Let me, let's take the second to applaud. Can you, all right.